Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. I want to talk about what's going on over in the war zone. And I know there are so many we can't really keep track of. But we're going to start with Pakistan. The Chinese government, or rather a Chinese government official, which coincident with Chinese war games near Pakistan, has said any U.S. threat to Pakistan is a threat to China. I don't know about you. I don't want to go to war with China. They really do have nuclear weapons. And thanks to the Clinton administration and the L'Oreal Corporation, they can hit what they're aiming at now. There's no reason for us to be attacking Pakistan, which, by the way, has their own nuclear weapons, I might add. The reason for the U.S. to try and seize control of Pakistan is, of course, to continue the encirclement of Iran. And they're encircling Iran because, well, Israel said to do so. And the U.S. government is incapable of refusing anything Israel wants because Israel will blow the whistle on who really did 9/11. And it will be bad for Israel, but much worse for the U.S. federal government and the corporate media. Now, following the U.S. attack on the Pakistan military and Pakistan's permanent closing of supply routes through Pakistan into Afghanistan, the Pakistan Army chief has now given the okay to all Pakistani forces to fire on NATO when attacked. If NATO or American forces are attacking into Pakistan across the border from Afghanistan, Pakistan will return fire. They will fight back. They will defend themselves. They will not need to call up the chain of command to get permission. The rules of engagement have been changed. If you are fired on, you will return fire. Period. End of discussion. So this is rapidly getting out of control here. Now, the U.S. is trying to sell this idea of going into Pakistan because Ayman al-Zawahiri, the new head of al-Qaeda, claims to have kidnapped an American official who just happens to be Jewish. So, of course, we're going to drop everything that we're doing to go save this individual. So they've got this al-Zawahiri who's out there screaming, "I've kidnapped an American. Come and invade Pakistan, you schmucks." I mean, you infidels. But Zawahiri has a past record of involvement with the Central Intelligence Agency, as Osama bin Laden did up in Afghanistan. Zawahiri was fighting for the CIA in Bosnia. His brother was a CIA asset in Kosovo. They're all fakes. All these mean old Muslims being wagged at you to scare you into throwing your children onto the enemy's bayonets are all phonies working for CIA or Mossad or MI5. They're fake Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda means toilet in Arabic slang. The literal translation for Al-Qaeda is the base. But in Arabic slang, it means the toilet. And Raisha Al-Qaeda means I'm going to the bathroom. Now, if you were really Muslim Arabs and you were going to create an organization to strike fear into the hearts of the great Satan, would you call yourselves the toilet? Hi, I'm here from the toilet. I'm here to blow up your World Trade Center. And everybody starts... Silence! I kill you! And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Somebody just sent me a flashback article. Resignation of Newt Gingrich means Israel is losing a friend. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu lost his best friend in the U.S. Congress, and Israel lost its strongest supporter in the House Republican leadership when Newt Gingrich decided to step down as Speaker and retire. Well, maybe that's the reason for Newt's sudden popularity with the corporate media, is Israel wants their puppet in our White House. And I think on that grounds alone, we can't let it happen. We cannot let it happen. No government can serve two masters. And a government that serves Israel cannot and does not serve the American people. A friend to Israel is no friend to America. America needs leaders who will put America first, second, and third. If you have nothing else guiding you for next year's elections, if they stand up there and say they're a friend to Israel, vote for their opponent. If both of them say they're a friend for Israel, then stay home and drink. I am tired of a government that is working for the benefit of a foreign power to the detriment of the American people. Our children are being raised to just believe they have an obligation to go out and fight Israel's wars for them. I don't think so. All right, getting back to the situation about, well, Israel's wars, actually. Our government and the media is still trying to come up with some excuse to attack Iran. They're looking for a pretext. The U.S. hit Iran's central bank with more sanctions. See, it's all about the money. It's all about the clash of banking systems. They have to have a private central bank the same way that we do. They have to have debt-based currency. They have to be enslaved to the IMF. They're not allowed to just go off and run their own country for their own benefit. That's contrary to the empire. Now, a lot of people are looking at this sudden raft of explosions within Iran, and particularly with some of its nuclear infrastructure that is supporting its nuclear power station, and they're saying, okay, this is happening too much for it to be accidents. Israel may have already started their attack against Iran with sabotage, maybe even, who knows, cruise missiles. We don't know. But there's been a second explosion in the Iranian city of Isfahan. So I'm not buying that this is accidental. Not too many, not this close together. I think Israel's already started their attack. They're just not telling anybody. They're hoping you won't notice because it's the weekend. Got football games. Now, all these sanctions are only as good as the willingness of the rest of the world to go along with them. And that is not happening. As you're probably aware, the United States is trying to impose an embargo on Iranian oil. To say, we will not buy Iran's oil. We will strangle their money from oil to punish them for building a nuclear power station. Well, actually, if they're not selling oil any longer, they're going to work harder and faster for nuclear power, aren't they? But the foreign ministers of the European Union basically didn't agree. Europe knows the United States is lying about Iran's nuclear weapons exactly the same way the United States lied about Iraq's nuclear weapons. And Europe cannot afford the luxury of harming their economy any more than it's already been harmed, going along with U.S. hallucinations and wars about Iran on the basis of the laptop of death, which is unsupported by any evidence whatsoever that Iran is doing anything other than building a nuclear power station, which they're allowed to do under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Europe have their own problems to deal with right now. They're hovering at the edge of collapse and hamstringing their economy even more by saying we're not going to buy Iran's oil or sell them refined products back isn't going to help. And of course, Europe understands, knowing that American financial shenanigans is what destroyed Europe's banks and pension funds, is not going to win any support and agreement to going after and bashing on yet another one of Israel's enemies in the Middle East. Now, speaking of Israel, they're unhappy right now because since the so-called Super Committee failed to actually come to any agreements on how to solve the United States government's debt problem, mostly because we, the American people, are out of money. We're broke out here. We don't have it. You can call for all the taxes you want. We don't have it. Cannot get blood from a stone. And since the Super Committee has failed to come up with a plan, automatic budget cuts have come into effect, including cuts to the money that goes to Israel. They're having to make do without $250 million. that they thought they were going to get, that's now been hit by the automatic cuts. And Israel's furious. How dare you cut back money to us? Of course, my question is why, when Israel is such a powerful nation, why they've got the money to buy Intel and all these other companies, why are we still giving them money anyway? It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. But this whole thing where they're whining and crying about, the financial aid being given to them having to be cut back by $250 million. Reminds me of that scene in Fiddler on the Roof, where the guy is begging in the street, and the guy says, "Here, Abraham, here's a kopeck." And the beggar says, "1 kopeck. Last week you gave me 2 kopecks." First guy says, "I had a bad week." And the beggar says, "You had a bad week. Why should I suffer?" That's what Israel is saying. America is being destroyed. Why should it impact the money that Israel gets from America? 4 times the entire cost of the Apollo moon program. And we're still waiting on a giant leap for mankind. I don't think we're going to get it. Now, Moscow is getting very nervous about the United States missile defense system. Russia was sort of going along with us over the idea that we had to protect Europe and ourselves from attacks from Iran. But Russia has come to understand Iran isn't a threat. And this missile defense is an attempt to basically bring the nuclear war to Moscow's doorstep. They're not happy. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back. Last segment of our show here on a Friday, heading into the weekend. Somebody just sent me a reminder. This is the oath of office that members of the United States Senate are required to swear to upon assuming their duties. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. So that means that every senator who voted for this bill to authorize military detentions for American citizens on American soil has violated their oath of office. If they were honorable men and women, they would resign. Of course, we know they're not honorable. That's why they are senators. But it is obvious, I think, to everybody that our government has gone rogue, that we are on the verge of tyranny. I still think they're trying to bluff us and scare us with all this talk about detentions and torture. But on the other hand, if things get really ugly, we know this government is capable of great evil. They've already done it. History has shown that over time, the teller of white lies will win out over the honest person. The teller of white lies will lose to the teller of black lies. The teller of black lies will lose to the thief. The thief will lose to the blackmailer. The blackmailer will lose to the murderer. The murderer will lose to the genocidal tyrant. Over time, government becomes more oligarchical and more willing to engage in criminal, tyrannical, dictatorial behavior. In these evil and dark times, the question is not, what is the U.S. federal government capable of? The question is really, what is the U.S. federal government not capable of? And it's a short list.